The following program is a public access production. Comcast is required to provide time on this channel and make it available pursuant to franchise agreements with the communities we serve. Comcast is not affiliated with the following program or the producers of public access programming and is not responsible for the content. The following program does not reflect the opinions of Comcast or its affiliates.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. Yes, this is me, Ms. Rhonda B., coming to you from Voices of Mass Discussion. I want to thank you for joining us once again this evening. I want to quickly say that my media sister, Ms. Maureen Forte, she was not able to join us today because she had found herself in the hospital. So we wish you well, Ms. Maureen. But today what we do have is another partner in crime, Ms. Mary T. from the Mary T. Perspective. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you for being here, everyone, and welcome.
Okay, and I'm so excited because our special guest today is Ms. Debbie Halvorson. And I want to thank you, Ms. Debbie, for joining us.
Thanks, Rhonda.
Okay, no problem. So Debbie, as many of you may already know, is she is running, because you know she always do the big stuff. So she has the nerve to be running not only for the congressional seat, but against our dear friend, Mr. Jesse Jackson, Jr. So we contacted her, and of course she's gracious enough. And that's one thing I want to thank you and remind you guys. Debbie, every office she's in, she's always been pleasant and allowed us, the small media, to interview her, pick her brain, and see what her platform is. And this time was no exception. So we thank you for that, Debbie.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be with both of you, Rhonda and Mary. And I just also want to say, gosh, Maureen, I hope you get better. I didn't know she was in the hospital.
Right. Yeah, she's okay. She's called herself cooking. That's not what she do, so she gave herself food poison.
Oh, no.
So at least that's what they said.
Okay.
But so from now on, we had to take her out to dinner. She can't cook anymore. So, but Maureen, we wish you well. So, but anyways, you know what? A couple things. We're going to let Debbie reintroduce herself to the public, to us in the community, because most of us know her and know of her. But a lot of people are surprised as to the venture that she's undertaking. And I'm sure she probably surprised herself a little bit, too. But one thing I want to remind Debbie, years ago when, I was sort of new at this, and we had contacted her, interviewed her at her office. I thanked her for allowing us, the small media, to come in. And she said one thing she had learned early on in her career is that you never treat little people like they're nobody, because you never know when the nobody's going to become the somebodies. I have repeated that to so many politicians because that was just so profound to me at the time. And it's true, too, though. But, what happened, I was looking, doing the research for this, one of your videos, and you repeated that here again recently about somebody told you that about everybody was so surprised when you won your state seat. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting that was something that you believed in, and then you still carry it forward. So now I'll let you tell your own story.
Well, thanks, Rhonda. and again, and Mary, thank you so much, because, and I do believe that, mm-hmm. and I will get to that, but I am Debbie Halvorson, and one thing I believe in, and I will never change, is you are an equal. It doesn't matter, and that's what I've proven as I've run, whether it was for local office, because I started out as Crete Township Clerk, then I went on to run for State Senator, and I was running against Aldo DeAngelis, somebody who had been there 19 years. Most people said, does she know what she's doing? That poor woman. Does she realize she's going to get squashed? Right. Well, what I would do was go around places and say, it doesn't matter if you're going to vote for me or not, you need to know who I am. Mm-hmm. And again, going back to the fact that everybody puts their pants on the same way, and people need to realize that elected officials are no different. We're here, I've just chosen a different kind of career of helping people. And unfortunately, people who choose this way of life sometimes forget where they come from. And I have never done that. So I went on to beat Aldo DeAngelis, and the reason...
And made history.
And made history as the first woman ever to hold that Senate seat. But I want to remind everybody, his campaign manager said, we knew Debbie Halvorson was going to win because Aldo knew all the bank presidents, but Debbie knew all the tellers. Mm-hmm. You have to remember that sort of thing. Well, and then I went on to serve as the first woman ever to be majority leader, and serving with Email Jones. And we did get a lot done. In fact, Barack Obama was elected in 1996 also as state senator. In fact, he walked precincts for me in South Holland.
Oh, okay.
Because his race was over in the primary, and he went to Emil Jones and said, okay, so I want to help. Where can I help? And Emil Jones said, well, we have Debbie Halvorson, who has the race of her life. And he goes, well, I've heard about Debbie Halvorson, I want to go help her. And he said, okay, well, we need you to go help. And he not only wrote me a check, he walked precincts.
Yeah, and you know, and Obama mentioning him, he's another person that as he was coming along, recognized the small end of things, and so we never had a problem, you know, reaching out to him.
Right.
Lord wknows we didn't know he was going to be president. We really been nice to him. But we didn't have any difficulty reaching out to him. So I just always remember that, and I repeated it so many times over the years, and then when I heard you saying it in one of your press conferences, I'm like, oh, she must really believe that stuff.
But I do, and because I grew up in a very modest family. You know, we were poor, and my mom always reminded that don't ever forget where you come from. And so, you know, I did. I grew up with two brothers. I was the oldest, and my father refinished furniture. And, you know, he handed my mom a small check and said, here, honey, make ends meet. And sometimes our ends were so far away from each other, they didn't only meet, they didn't even know each other.
Right.
So, you know what, I've never forgot that. So as I've done things with my life, I wanted to help people. I now have a great life. I want to make sure everybody else has a great life.
Okay, so we appreciate it. And now this is the thing. Now we'll get to the political end of it. Now we've done the nice stuff. So because there's two things. First of all, like she said, she made history when she ran for DeAngela's seat, which is really huge back in the day. And many of us, I would say myself included, did not think that was a possible
Right,
winner.
and you're with the majority.
And not because it had anything to do with you, it's just that if you follow politics or if you've been involved in the political arena, you know most of the time, or at least you feel, it's an inside job.
Correct.
And so what we knew at the time is that you were coming from the outside in.
Oh, yeah. I didn't come from a...
really from the outside.
Exactly. I didn't have a political family. This was a grassroots.
Right.
I had so many energized volunteers, didn't have the money, you know, that sort of thing. So you're right, very much outside in, and being a female.
And being a female, yeah.
Right.
Especially, even though a lot of people won't even remember or believe that, when you ran originally, it was not okay for a female to branch out into a man's world.
Right.
Today it's a lot more accepted. You know, even though they still try to keep you down, but it's not. It's not the norm. It's not politically okay.
Right,
But back
right.
then it was like, how dare she? And so then now we're going to fast. You know, you had your seat, nice, comfortable seat. You were somebody in the South Suburban area. You know, we all knew you, respected you, when you could have just stayed where you were.
Right. I was the Senate Majority Leader, number 2 in the state Senate. But in 2008, Barack was running for president, and he sort of urged me to run for Congress, and I had a lot to decide. You know, I could stay as the number 2 person in the Senate, or I could go to Congress. And I believed that it wasn't about me, and it wasn't about titles. It was where could I make the biggest difference for the people. And I chose to go to Congress and did win big in a relatively new district. It was different than where I'd served as a state senator. And so...
And against big money.
And against big... Because it was always a Republican district. You know, Jerry Weller held that seat forever. And so I won that seat big and served 2 of the most historic years in Congress, I believe, ever, because we passed health care reform, we passed financial reform, the House passed an energy bill that died in the Senate, but I stood there with Barack, whatever he wanted. I believed it was very important that we stood with our president. He needs help. He still needs help. And I think that's why I lost my seat in 2010, because we stood for all the right reasons and for all the right causes, and I wouldn't have done anything different. You know, my mom had breast cancer at 49, and remember I said my dad was self-employed. You know, they couldn't afford health care. My mom had breast cancer at 49. I watched her fight her bills instead of her illness. And you know what, everybody out there knows someone who's had to do that. And no one should have to go through that. You know, we live in a wonderful country, and that's not how things should be. And I knew that when I went to Congress, I was going to work hard on the health care bill.
And you and Obama sort of had that kinship.
Yeah,
there.
we did. And, having been friends, he called me, regularly. Or I went to the White House with, different caucuses to talk about things like that. And so these were important things. And he took my loss personally because nobody thought after winning big in 2008 that I would lose in 2010. But as you all know, it was a terrible, terrible year.
But you know what? Another thing, too, that I find of interest. First of all, you guys had the kinship with the mom and the cancer. And then I also had lost a brother to cancer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But fortunately, it was unfortunate that he passed, but fortunately that's why times matter and politics matter. Because by the time he came along and started taking his demise with the cancer, the medical, and did not have that type of insurance, like you would need. But then the system did kick in. Good. And then they did, see him through his transition, and then the family did not get saddled with so many families, they ended up filing bankruptcy. So the system has changed over the years, so it was important. I'm not even going to tell everybody how I think Obama spent too much time on that health care, and now we're going to talk about you.
Well, I could probably tell you.
We're going to talk about you instead, because now this is a couple people had sent us some questions about some things that I had written in an article about you. The first thing they want to know is that the intermodal, you talk about that a lot.
Sure.
Now, is that in Joliet, or where is that?
Yes, that is in Joliet. And the 2 years I spent in Congress, to me it was a very big accomplishment. We were able to bring 7,000 jobs to that intermodal by putting everybody in a room, not taking no for an answer, trying to figure out how we were going to make that work. That was in my old district.
Okay.
Joliet was like the center of industry and in the district. It is not in the new district.
Okay.
See, I think that's what people need to understand. The 11th Congressional District is where I served for 2 years. And when I lost in 2010, the redistricting that happens every 10 years put part of my old district in with the new 2nd.
Okay.
So it's not like I'm trying to come into the 2nd and run.
Okay.
Part of my old district was added to the old 2nd.
Now, there where you live in Crete, now was Jesse Jackson, was this district always your district? Was he, because he wasn't always our
He did not have Crete. He had a little piece of Will County, which was University Park.
Right.
But now all of eastern Will County and all of Kankakee County, which was my old congressional seat, has been added to the 2nd because he lost so much population. So that's why our two districts have been put together. And so that's what has caused us to run against each other in the primary.
Now, you know what may be of interest now, when we first heard that you were going to run against Jesse Jackson, first you hear the rumors long before you hear them.
Oh, isn't that the truth?
So we first heard the rumors, and we sort of was, again, dismissing it. It's like, no, we know she's cocky, but that'll be a little bit out there. And the reason why we had come to that opinion, because we knew that it was going to now be more the further south suburban area, all the way out to Kankakee, which wasn't his territory. But what we also at the time knew that 75% of the votes would still come from Cook County.
So probably somewhere around there.
Yeah, so then we heard the guy from Oak Forest, the mayor of Oak Forest was going to run. So I'm thinking, so this we were talking. So, okay, the mayor of Oak Forest runs, then who would that help? Debbie, or would that help Jackson, because it'll be more Cook County? Then I'm thinking, like, no, because even though Cook County, she would need someone really, really strong to run in Cook County. This is what I'm thinking.
Okay.
And I contacted Isaac Cage. Remember, he left.
Oh, yes.
They asked him if he was going to run. He said he wasn't going to run. I'm like, okay, so she doesn't have the strength. Where's she going to get the strength? Because with the reputation and the strength that Jesse Jr. has, in large part thanks to his dad, with the black inner city churches, I'm like, who's advising her? Is what I was saying. And then lo and behold, we turn on our TV and says there's black ministers accepting Debbie Halvorson. That's why I said I have to talk to her. She obviously knows something.
Well, and let me also explain.
We don't know. Well, it's not the game. I don't want to set the game, because I know you don't consider yourself playing a game, but you know what you're up against, the momentum.
Well, and also let me explain. When I was a state senator, I represented the Cook County part.
Okay, yeah, I knew that part, but
So
not enough.
I'm not a stranger
Right.
to the area.
Right, right.
And people are really tired of his ineffectiveness. And so before I got into the race, my phone was ringing off the hook.
But you know what happened? Most people that we talk to, whether they send me an email or Facebook, the people as a whole in this district, they're not dissatisfied with Jesse Jackson. And they know you and they like you. It's like to them, it's sort of neutral.
Oh, okay.
It's like, you know, we're not angry enough at him to go out in droves and fight and not support him. Most of them are not going to vote anyway, but to go out and not support him. But, you know, they're like sort of neutral. It's like, and the reason for that is not because he's done anything so great. It's just that the people with the power, up until we heard you know, that you had got the support, but it's like this is what I was thinking. The people with the power was the one. You know, you had the mayor supporting him, and then you had the churches supporting him. But that's why we want to hear you tell your story, because obviously we're assuming something that's not true. Because obviously you have a foundation that no one gave you credit for doing it, because you have some mayors supporting you.
Well, I have worked for so many years. You know what? I was locally elected, like I said. So I started working in 1993 for the people.
For the people.
See, and I think that's what people don't realize. I've always worked for the people. It's not about party leaders. It's not about elected people. It's about the community, civic leaders. It's about the clergy. They're tired of not getting somebody to answer their call. They're tired of providing all the services to their church members. They remember when I was a senator and they called and needed
And
something
actually
and
got
I
the service.
provided it for them. They want to go back to the day where someone cared about them and their church. And they want someone who's going to respond to the needs.
Of the community.
And that's what I've always done. They have some of the greatest programs out there. We don't need to be reinventing the wheel. And the state is broke, the country is broke, and here we have these pastors and these bishops and these elders providing these great services that they just need a little help with.
And that's what we heard a lot of when Isaac Hayes was
Right.
was running, because you know you're wondering like, well, why are people converting his way? And that's what they were saying.
Right.
You know, it's like the economy is just not our friend right now.
No.
So we need someone to recognize that we're out here, political season or not. That's
Right.
what we were hearing a lot.
Well,
then.
and
You know,
people
now-
are hurting.
And you know, I had a conversation with you a few years back when you were a senator for the state,
Right.
and you promised me, and we're at Governor State, that you would always recognize that we are more alike than we are different.
Absolutely.
And I said to you, that's what we miss so often when people become elected officials.
Right.
Elected officials become self-serving
Right.
and forget about that little small number of people,
Right.
and that we're more like you. You're no different just because you became an elected
Exactly.
official.
No,
And you promised me that you would work for us.
Right, and
But-
I do, right.
But I have another question too
Okay,
about
sure.
the literature, and you put it out, Jesse put it out. Everybody promotes these jobs.
Well, mine's actually proven, 7,000 of them.
And then so that, and people did not dispute that, so
No,
obviously somebody
no.
knows that's true. But even in all of his literature, if all of these jobs were brought to the community, then how come so many people don't have jobs?
Yeah,
Exactly.
I agree, and that's why I'm running. People are frustrated. They've come to me and said, he has had one issue for 16 years and has not delivered.
That airport.
That airport, why has he put all his eggs in one basket, an airport that's never been in his district, and still doesn't deliver? People are sick of hearing about it. People want somebody like myself who's got a proven record, who said, I've delivered 7,000 jobs to an intermodal. I know how to do it. I want to do it here now. In fact, I'm not waiting to be elected. I've started working on an intermodal in Harvey. You know, I'm working with some railroads, I'm working with some trucking firms. There's no reason why we shouldn't have a logistic things like the intermodal that we have in Joliet right here.
But what are you doing about a training program for our young people who are not quite
Exactly.
prepared for this?
And that's exactly it. I grew up, I went to Bloom. My husband went to Thornton. Who knows an area better than those who grew up here? My husband is on a board, Navistar board at Thornton. because he believes, because he has a trucking firm, he believes we need to train our young people in high school because not everybody is four-year college material. He wasn't, I'm not. I went to a vocational school. That's the first thing that gets cut. Do you know that vocational education gets cut because the members of Congress, I don't think any of them went to a vocational education or got a skill. They're different than we are. We've got to have people in Congress that believe in getting our young people off the street, believe in vocational education. Let's get our kids skills. You know, you can provide a summer work program, big deal. We've got to get them skilled and get jobs and make things and have manufacturing back in our communities. You can put 16 years into an airport that still hasn't come, but that hasn't brought a job now. I grew up poor. The rent is due. But you need a job now.
And case in point, Caterpillar. Caterpillar have about 20,000 jobs that will be, we'll have to fill these jobs from abroad because we don't have the qualified workforce here. So what are we going to do about that?
So that's why we need to be working with South Suburban College and Prairie State College and Moraine Valley because that's where the training dollars should be going. And it's not. And that's why one of my big deals, other than, and we haven't gotten to it yet, but remind me we need to talk about keeping our people in our homes, stopping these foreclosures. Yeah, I'm working with the NAACP on it, and we need to talk about that. But I have a plan that we've got to stop cutting Head Start. In fact, we got to stop cutting it. We need to double it. Because if we don't start getting our young people ready for kindergarten, they'll never catch up. They'll never be ready. And if they're not reading and doing well in school, how can we expect people to graduate?
But you know what, but back to a couple of ministers who I talked to in Chicago Heights. Now, and then I talked to you when you were state rep about this, because one of the things they keep bringing up, and one of the things, I guess, when you do your, matter of fact, I think we were in Lansing or Linwood one time at an event you were speaking at, about the apprenticeship jobs. Now, you recognize the importance of that, but, you know, what, if anything, have you done towards, because that's a big concern of theirs, because, you know, well, obviously, you know, you grew up in the Chicago Heights, Harvey area. They were strong middle-class families for years.
I know.
Okay.
So was I. You know, and that's exactly it. So what we need to do is expand these. Now, when I was in Congress, I had a bill to expand the apprenticeship jobs, and I worked with helmets to hard hats. That's a program for when our veterans come home, that they exchange their helmet for a hard hat, because we have a very high percentage of unemployment, not only in our minority community, but our minority community coming home from when they serve overseas. So it's an online program, and people can contact me, and I'll be able to do more if I win for Congress, when I win. But it's a huge program, online program, that we can help our young people with, and they find what they're best at. And then what else we need to do is to continue to put a preference on our veterans when they come home. And that's the other thing I did, is we turned Silver Cross Hospital in Joliet, which was going to be empty, into a mega clinic for our veterans. You can't just send a letter of recommendation or make a phone call. You got to put people in your office. You got to be a squeaky wheel like I was. People saw me coming, and they're like, "Oh no, here she comes again." But that's the only way you can get things done. And in 2 short years, I got a mega clinic for our veterans, 7,000 jobs for an intermodal, and $651 million in projects across my district. You know, I believe God had a plan. I lost in that district for a reason, because now I can do something here.
Now, you know, this is something of interest, too. Now, and I know you talk about this in sound bites, but can you tell us in a nutshell how, because it's still a big move. Because I know you do, a little woman do big things. But, but how did you get from your kitchen table to, I'm going to take on, because you know, you're not just taking on Junior, you're taking on the Jacksons.
Right.
You're taking on, you know, history.
Right.
So how did you get from your kitchen table to our round table, to talking about such a big move?
Well, I felt it's my responsibility because I served on a local level, a state level, and I served in Congress. And as people started calling me, and because I will tell you, I've kept a journal since the early 90s when I got into political office. Every day, it was kind of my therapy. It started out as my therapy, and then it was just automatic. I kept a journal on everything. And so you can imagine after, almost 20 years of journaling, when I lost, it was my therapy to start reading everything. And then I started writing a book. And that's really what I thought I would do. I started consulting with alternative energy companies because I really believe the future is going to be alternative energy. Well, all of a sudden they did the redistricting. And people said, oh my God, you have got to give us a choice. We can't automatically just have a congressman. Just because since 1995, it's automatic that he's just been your congressman.
Because it's funny, because when they redistrict and we knew that you were in the district, Maureen and the rest of us, we sort of joked about it. That's why I'm telling you, it's like so much of it's like, how did she get there? We just sort of joked about it because of what had happened.
Right.
With the state. But
well, and everybody called me. They all said, Debbie, please, if it's not you, he's going to automatically just walk into another new district like he always does. Please. And so when my phone just kept ringing and ringing and ringing and people kept calling and coming over, and they said, please, we need a choice. And, finally I said, to my husband, we need to talk about this because it's starting to become my responsibility that I must give the people a choice.
See?
Yeah.
That's exactly the way I see it. Little women do big things, and sometimes psychologically, you need behind every big woman is a little woman. Behind every big man is a little man.
Right.
And we are the ones that get things done. When I say we, because I get things done without even doing things because I'm following behind you.
Yeah,
but I'm standing up for all the people out there, and now that I'm in it, you don't know, everywhere I go, people are thanking me everywhere because there are so many people who wanted to do it but are scared to death. And I'm not afraid. Nothing, and people in church and God and everybody says, be not afraid, and I'm not. And there's something, and I'm very spiritual, I pray, and I tell you guys this because God is behind me.
And you know what, actually, I believe in that too, because it's just like, what are the odds that would even happen? Right. And then even with us, like I said, with doing the interviews in the small media, we too it was really sort of strange that it would happen. It's like, what are the odds? Because people would actually say that, well, what if Debbie ran against him? Oh, what are the likelihood?
Right.
But, 30 minutes go back quickly, so what I want to do is give you an opportunity to help us close out.
Okay.
Because in the reality of elections, and I know you have your campaign manager, Sean Howard, here, and we were talking to him.
He's like our political director. We have quite a team.
Okay, but one of the, the audience, you guys can't see it, but one of the gentlemen's here, and then he was, just giving some insight on a lot of things that's happening out here politically. But even though it's the one man, one vote country that we live in, but the reality, for many of you guys who's in the office, it takes more of a groundswell than that. Because the one man, one vote has to come out. And you're going up against a powerhouse.
Sure.
You're going up against the money. You're going up against the old boy network.
Sure.
And so just tell the public how you, Debbie, plans on getting out there and doing it one person at a time and what the public can do to support you.
Well, and thank you, Rhonda, and thank you, Mary. But our plan, and I'm just so appreciative to have so many people watching and being a part of Rhonda and Mary's team and Maureen. But what we do, and it's pretty exciting, I think, because, at the grassroots effort that we have in our team, we spend most mornings at train stations, and then we visit a few restaurants, and then we go back to our office and make some calls, and we meet with people. People are coming into the office all the time, and you can contact us. I think it's at 708-672-4100 or debbiehalvorson.com. And then by nighttime and in the afternoon, we're headed out because there's so many people that want to meet us. They have house parties and listening parties and, at different events. And we're right back to getting a few hours sleep and starting all over again. And this is how we're going to win. Saturdays, we're going to barbershops and beauty shops and grocery stores. And then on Sundays, I'm in 3 to 5, maybe a couple more churches. And it's just been fabulous. I've met so many wonderful people.